This video is sponsored by NordVPN, the world's best airline. That's where Abu Dhabi-based Etihad was heading a decade ago. They had just placed the largest aircraft order in aviation history, worth $43 billion in list prices, and were being showered in awards. Meanwhile, neighboring Emirates and Qatar Airways were coming up alongside them to form the three largest and most powerful international airlines in the world. So what happened?
The losses just keep mounting for Etihad Airways. The Abu Dhabi-based airline on Thursday reported $1.28 billion worth of losses. This follows around $1.5 billion of losses in 2017 and nearly $2 billion of losses a year earlier.
How did Etihad Airways go from such a bright trajectory to losing almost $5 billion in just 3 years and cancelling the majority of their aircraft orders? After all, Etihad is the flag carrier of the United Arab Emirates and the incredibly rich emirate of Abu Dhabi. How could Emirates compete and become profitable while Etihad, who arguably has a better onboard product, could not? Well, we need to go back in time to see exactly what happened. Originally, the Middle East had only one big airline connecting the region with the world. Do you know which one? Gulf Air, which we now know as the national airline of Bahrain. Originally, Gulf Air was jointly owned by Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and you guessed it, Abu Dhabi. Qatar was the first to withdraw in 2002 to focus on its fast-growing national airline, which we of course now know and love. And the next year, the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi decided it was time to withdraw from the airline as well, which led to the formation of Etihad Airways. Usually, when launching and certifying an airline, it's a lengthy process. But given the money was not a problem for young Etihad, they were able to launch their first route to Beirut in November 2003, the same year they were founded. Just like me, they wanted things to go fast, but when you go fast, things get risky.
I want to go really fast. It went too fast.
Just 7 months after their first flight, Etihad placed an attention-grabbing order. Etihad's chairman proclaimed that he could not recall a time in aviation history when a startup operation barely 8 months old has had the confidence, resource, and ambition to place orders for 36 new wide-body aircraft with a combined value of over $7 billion. The order included A330s, A340s, and even the A380 in its second year of operation. A few years later, they placed their famous order at Farnborough Airshow, the largest in aviation history at the time, for over 200 aircraft, many of which were wide bodies. This set the scene for Etihad's massive growth to go from nothing to one of the world's largest airlines, connecting all 6 continents in the span of a decade. Unfortunately, this is when things started to go wrong. In my unprofessional opinion, the main reason Etihad has suffered so greatly is their Etihad Partners initiative, which was probably one of the biggest mistakes made by any airline in aviation history. There are a few other important reasons that contributed to their record losses that I'll mention later, but this simply can't be overlooked. Now here's the thing, the aviation industry is already one of the toughest businesses in the world if you want to turn a profit, and even the strongest players can go from huge profits to huge losses within the span of a year. As a consequence, there are always airlines that are on the brink of bankruptcy. Of course, there is a chance they'll turn around, just like many airlines have done in the past, but there is a great risk to investing money in an airline that is already making huge losses. So bring in Etihad's diversification strategy, Etihad Partners. Instead of joining a typical airline alliance, Etihad's then CEO James Hogan decided that the best strategy would be to invest in struggling airlines, obviously at a relatively low price, and do somewhat of an external and internal overhaul to ensure profitability while giving them a partner to bolster each other's networks. This started with Etihad's infamous investment in Air Berlin, where they acquired an almost 30% stake in late 2011.
Abu Dhabi-based Etihad Airways is to spend €73 million to increase its stake in Air Berlin to almost 30% and will loan it nearly €200 million.
Air Berlin had been making pretty significant losses in the years prior, but 2011 was by far the worst year for them. I won't go into any of the issues that Air Berlin faced in this video, but clearly Etihad as a majority partner was intent on changing their trajectory. The following year, Etihad invested in numerous other airlines like Air Seychelles, Air Lingus, and Virgin Australia, as well as Air Serbia, which seems to be one of their only remaining investments. These were all relatively small investments or small airlines, so definitely not large enough to sink Etihad. However, Air Berlin, with its fleet of hundreds of aircraft, only turned around somewhat to make a meek profit of €6.8 million in 2012. Etihad had invested more than 10 times that at €73 million. The following years, things got worse and worse. Etihad's investment was becoming less secure by the day. Meanwhile, Indian authorities announced that they would allow foreign airlines to take up to a 49% stake in Indian carriers. And in November 2013, Etihad made another fateful decision.
Jet to sell 24% stake to Etihad Airways for 1,600 crores.
And the deal is finally going to get closed by March 2013. That's what our sources are telling us at this moment.
They bought a 24% stake in India's largest airline, Jet Airways, for $379 million. This could seem like a smart way to capture the massive and fast-growing Indian aviation segment, except Jet Airways was another airline in need of a turnaround. This brings us to 2014, in my opinion the height of Etihad Airways and the most significant year in its history. That year they released one of my favorite airline ads ever, which perfectly embodies the potential of what Etihad Airways was and could become.
Occasionally, people come along who are not content with simply moving things along. They want to take things further. Tear up the plans and start again. Then, take another brave step. They will see the future and knock down the walls to reach it. Insist the dream is possible. Overcome all indecision and take a running jump into the uncharted. Bored by reinvention of the superficial kind, they want more. Because their goal isn't to improve on what has been done before, but to totally reimagine it.
With airlines around the world using the A380 as an opportunity to showcase the best in luxury travel, Etihad Airways revealed their revolutionary new product and branding. And Etihad succeeded. The whole world was talking about Etihad and everyone wanted to try them. Etihad was finally making decent profits and things were really looking up. At the time, Etihad's onboard products greatly overshadowed their Gulf competitors Emirates and Qatar, despite the former having onboard showers. The residents had truly raised the bar for luxury travel, and the future seemed exciting as Etihad promised massive growth. As if Etihad wasn't making enough waves, not least by worrying their competitors with their airline investments on 5 continents, they announced that they would take a 49% stake in Italian flag carrier Alitalia for €560 million.
This isn't the first time Alitalia has flown into financial headwinds. It's been fighting for its financial life for years. The airline was rescued from failure in 2009. It cut costs, but since then has accumulated debts of over €1 billion.
I've flown Alitalia and thought it was fun. If I told my cat I liked my flight, even she would know that investing in Alitalia probably wouldn't be the wisest decision. But again, Etihad was hoping for a successful, say it with me, turnaround. If there's any proof that money can't solve all your problems, it really is Etihad Partners. 2015 was by all measures Etihad's best year. Their image was the best it had been. They'd recorded their highest profit ever of $103 million, flew 17.6 million passengers, and had the most aircraft they've ever had in their fleet. 121. Sadly for Etihad, their investments weren't improving. In fact, they were getting worse and worse. Air Berlin, Jet Airways, and Alitalia were like three heavy stones weighing Etihad down and provided far less value than a traditional code share agreement would, especially with Etihad's expanding network. 2016 became a real wake-up call for the airline, which perhaps came too late, as they suddenly lost a mind-blowing $1.8 billion in 1 year, all while being forced to cut routes. The next year, Alitalia went into administration and Air Berlin completely went out of business. 2017 is the year when the airline realized the extent to which their current investment strategy, which differed greatly from Emirates and Etihad at the time, was ruining them. The management was immediately changed, but it was too late. Emirates and Qatar Airways had managed to build networks that were so large that the profitability of individual routes was not as important as the economies of scale that they managed to achieve. After all, operating 7 flights per day to London is a lot cheaper per flight than operating 1, 2, or 3. Given their dire financial state, Etihad could no longer sustain loss-making routes, and burdened by their enormous order book, the airline started to cancel routes one by one. Just to give an example of how bad it got, they halved their service to the United States in pretty much 1 year, canceling routes and frequencies to cities that Emirates and Qatar Airways continue to serve profitably due to their scale. Things got better in 2017 and 2018 though, with around $300 million less in losses each year. They still totaled losses of $1.5 and $1.2 billion respectively. As if this wasn't enough, their other major investment, Jet Airways, had been draining their cash this whole time. And unfortunately, the airline went out of business in 2019. The smaller airlines like Air Seychelles or Virgin Australia haven't done much better. 2019 was also the year when Etihad officially abandoned any plans of competing with Emirates or Qatar as a super connector, and effectively ended the ME3 as we know them. Instead, Etihad would focus on Abu Dhabi with less reliance on connecting traffic. This also ensured the airline would focus on routes with enough demands for travel to and from their hub rather than their wider network. Most significantly, Etihad cancelled almost all their unfilled orders for new types of wide bodies and retired their whole A330 fleet, which had previously been the backbone, mainly to focus on the versatile and economic 787. It's fascinating to think what could have been if Etihad had continued its meteoric rise. Could they ever have been profitable? If so, under what circumstances? If you guys have any theories, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. For now, I think I speak for most of us when I say that we can only hope Etihad Airways returns to profitability eventually and figures out how to survive in this brutal industry. Personally, I think it will be difficult for Etihad to ever be truly profitable in its current form. Not only does the airline have a larger fleet than necessary to serve Abu Dhabi, but competitors are also popping up everywhere to take even more market share as Etihad struggles with its identity between a premium and a low-cost carrier. One thing seems clear though, as the industry shifts toward more point-to-point flights, the necessity for Middle Eastern superconnectors will decrease unless they can take us to increasingly exotic and underserved markets. For Etihad, their initial dream of ever becoming a true global connector will likely never come true. And at this point, that's probably for the better. I'd like to thank NordVPN for sponsoring this video, which is appropriate since the Middle East is one place where you really appreciate a good VPN. It took me literally dozens of flight connections before I realized that the reason my FaceTime or Skype didn't work was because the government blocked them. And even now I forget, but having NordVPN saved on my phone helped me every time. Even if you're not traveling through the Middle East right now, there are so many other benefits to NordVPN. Have you guys ever been watching a TV show and then you go abroad or you travel and it's not available anymore? Or you want to watch a TV show that you know is available on certain sites, but for some reason it's not available in your country? Well, the good news is that NordVPN lets you bypass that. All this in addition to the obvious benefit, which is added cybersecurity. So go to nordvpn.com/nonstopdan or use coupon nonstopdan to get a 3-year plan with 70% off plus 1 month free. The link is at the top of the description.